My name's Eleanor Brooks, but everyone in Kettering just calls me Ellie. I'm 64, a retired librarian, recovering from knee surgery, and staying, temporarily, at Meadowlark Assisted Living. Last night, my neighbor texted me a photo. My little brick house on Florence Avenue and a bright real estate sign staked in the yard. Coming soon. I opened the listing app, and there it was. My living room. My bookshelf. My quilt folded neatly at the end of the bed. My house. Up for sale. How? I was in a recovery bed, not a realtor's office. Then Nurse Linda's warning echoed back. Don't sign anything for 72 hours. I had signed anyway. Groggy, embarrassed, thinking it was just paperwork. 2 signatures, 1 pen, and now my whole life had a price tag. 2 weeks later, a yellow Post-it slipped from my son-in-law's jacket pocket. Big block letters, a phone number, and one line that made my stomach drop. Title Co., closing Fry 2 p.m., Brooks. That's when I realized the train was already moving without me on it. So I called the only person I could still trust, Tom Ray, my old high school debate partner turned small-town lawyer. He didn't ask for details. He just said 3 words, "I've got you." And the next morning, we stood before a judge who looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Ms. Brooks, do you want your home sold?" I said, "No, Your Honor, I want my home." Tom added softly, "Power of attorney gives power. It doesn't give ownership." That was the moment everything started to turn. 48 hours earlier. The day the trouble started, there wasn't even drama. I wasn't running a marathon or rescuing a cat from a tree. I was reaching for a casserole in the oven and stepped backward on the corner of a throw rug I'd been meaning to anchor down since December. The rug shot forward, my heel shot back, and I went down hard. The casserole survived, my left knee did not. After the ambulance ride, I barely remember the ER lights and the clipped rhythm of questions I answered with a face that wanted to be brave. I woke up in Miami Valley Hospital with a brand new partial knee replacement and a nurse named Linda who had a voice that could settle a crying baby in a room full of relatives. "Miss Brooks," she said, leaning in close, talking to me like one adult talks to another when the world around them is trying to speed up. "I'm going to tell you something that will sound boring, and you will be tempted to wave me off because you're used to doing everything yourself. Do not sign anything legal for 72 hours. That includes financial papers, deeds, and anything that says durable. Pain medication is real. It doesn't make you wrong, it makes you foggy. Give yourself the grace to wait." I nodded like people nod when they are polite and sedated and prideful, and I filed the information somewhere behind the haze that makes you think you can walk a hallway because you just swung your legs over the side of the bed. My daughter arrived that evening with her husband. Alyssa is 35, all color-coded calendars and snacks and portion-controlled baggies, the kind of woman you want running a committee because she will send out the agenda a week early and remember to bring highlighters. Her husband, Nate, is a financial planner who can say market correction in a way that makes you think maybe a storm is a summer shower if you hold your umbrella just right. They came in with fuzzy socks, Greek yogurt, a charger, and a tote bag that promised competence. "We're going to bring you home with us," Alyssa said, smoothing the corner of the blanket as if that was the thing keeping me from falling off the earth. "It's a split level," I said out of the corner of a yawn. "You have stairs everywhere, sweetheart." She said, "We'll set you up in the downstairs den. We're going to take care of everything. You just heal." It's hard to argue with your own child when she looks like relief in human form. I smiled and squeezed her hand. Discharge day came with the slow bustle of morning rounds and the smell of coffee I wasn't allowed yet. A resident explained the pain meds, a physical therapist demonstrated a few exercises, and Nurse Linda said, "Remember, 72 hours. Say it back to me." I said, 72 hours, and she nodded like a coach who knows you've put the play in your pocket. Nate arrived with a pen clipped to his shirt and a folder under his arm. Just some routine paperwork for your stay with us, Mom, he said gently. Power of attorney for finances so we can pay your utilities while you're recovering, and a HIPAA release so we can talk to the doctors if we need to. This is what we do with all our clients. It's housekeeping, nothing scary. He smiled the way professionals smile when they're trying to make you feel like this is adulting and not a cliff. Housekeeping, I repeated, drowsy from the big white pill I had timed with the nurse so the ride home wouldn't be a carnival. Alyssa stood at the foot of the bed nodding encouragement, the way she had when she was 5, and I was letting go of the back of her bike. It's just paper, she said. Nurse Linda's 72 hours scraped a chair at the back of my mind, but I was tired, embarrassed to admit I couldn't understand what felt obvious to everyone else, and I was the kind of person who hates to be a problem. I signed where Nate flagged. 2 signatures, loopier than usual. Less weight, just paper. Recovery at Alyssa and Nate's house had shape and rules. Breakfast at 8, PT videos twice a day, ice on and off like a cadence. The den became my little country with the recliner angled toward the TV and a basket of magazines that had nothing to do with my life but made the room look coached by an interior designer. There were rules about odors and noise. Candles only if they were the clean kind. TV volume at 12. No blender while Owen, my 3-year-old grandson, was down for a nap. The microwave beep sounded like you'd set off something you couldn't control. We need boundaries, Alyssa said, and she said it gently, like it was a favor to all of us and not a new fence I hadn't asked for. I swallowed the urge to tell her that boundaries are supposed to be where you end and I begin, not a chalk line she draws around me and calls safety. At first, the gratitude swallowed the grit. I was fed. I was in a house where people I loved moved in and out of rooms with urgency and purpose. I washed Owen's little shirts with dinosaurs on them and folded them into neat stacks. I read Goodnight Moon 6 ways. Funny voice, regular voice, librarian voice, a version where the old lady says hush like a judge with a sense of timing. I did my exercises with the form of a rule follower and the secret stubbornness of a woman who hauled a family through a chemo year without dropping a ball anyone could see. The clue came 2 weeks in. The kind of clue that doesn't know it's important yet, that lands like a moth and doesn't become a signal flare until later. I was hanging up coats in the hall closet because busy hands are my default when people make me feel like a guest in my own life, and a Post-it floated out of my jacket pocket when I lifted it from the hook. I caught the yellow square midair. There, in block letters, with a phone number, Title Co., closing Fry, 2 p.m., Brooks. It was probably a coincidence, I told myself. People had the same last name. Kettering is the size where you can know someone 3 different ways and not realize it until you're both in line at the Kroger pharmacy. But my stomach did something I remember from parenting a teenager. This isn't a crisis. I'm sure it's not a crisis, but what if it is a crisis? When I asked Alyssa what everyone's Friday looked like, she had a lot to say about preschool pickup and the quarter-end audit and Nate's travel lunches. You just focus on your PT, Mom, she said briskly, and I let the Post-it do what so many clues do in the middle of a chapter. I slipped it into a book. In this case, the devotional on the nightstand. Hard to lose a truth if you tuck it in between 2 other ones. 2 days later, Alyssa drove me to Meadowlark Assisted Living to look around because she said the PT nurse suggested respite care would be easier on everyone for a few weeks. The lobby smelled like lemon wax and meatloaf. A woman with a kind voice offered us fruit-infused water and told us about the activities calendar, the Tuesday crafts, the Thursday bingo, the Sunday chapel service streamed from a church I didn't know. We toured a studio with beige carpet that looked like the beige carpet in every place designed for people who don't spill. And Alyssa said, "See, this is nice," with the tone of someone pushing a gift you didn't put on your list. "It's just for a month," she said when I sat carefully on the edge of the bed and felt my ribs count out breaths. "You'll have PT on site, and we'll bring Owen to visit, and I'll come after work, and you can heal without worrying about being in our way." I asked if I was in their way, a whisper that owed as much to pain as pride. She squeezed my knee, the right one, the one that still worked without complaint. Mom, no, that's not what I said. It's just we are underwater right now. Owen's therapy, my job, Nate's travel. You need more than we can give. This is best for everyone. Best for everyone, I repeated and rolled the phrase in my mouth like a hard candy you're trying to decide if you like. I signed admission forms and looked over my shoulder for Nurse Linda. They settled me into Meadowlark with a cheerful tour of the dining room and an explanation of how to sign up for the shuttle to the pharmacy. When the door closed after Alyssa, I stood very still in a space that wasn't mine and listened to the hum inside the walls. That night, my neighbor from back home, Mrs. Alvarez from across the street, queen of knowing what everyone's up to without weaponizing it, texted me a picture. My little brick house off Florence Avenue, a new sign staked in the front yard, coming soon. Under it, the smiling face of an agent who posed like she was delivering good news. Is this right? Mrs. Alvarez wrote. If it's a mistake, I'll yank it out with my own two hands. At first, I thought it was a prank. Then I thought it was a misunderstanding. Then I typed my address into a real estate app and found my living room wide-angle bright and my quilt folded at the foot of my bed like a throw in a model home. My books arranged by color, which I would never do because the Dewey Decimal System taught me to respect the alphabet. There it was, my home, as if it had shed me like a coat. I called Alyssa. She sounded tired. Mom, we talked about this, she said, which is what people say when they want you to believe a speech they gave themselves counts as a conversation. The market is high. You need accessible housing. You need a place with an elevator and a roll-in shower and neighbors who can check on you. What I said, warming, was I would look at options when I was ready. I did not say sell my house while I was down the hall from a bingo game. You gave us power of attorney, she said. And there it was, the thing that changes things. You said you trusted us to handle the logistics while you got better. I hung up before the crying started. I stared at a bird feeder outside my window that no one had to fill because it came with the room, and no birds came because the shrubs were too young to trust. I reached for the devotional and pulled out the Post-it. Title Co. Closing Friday, 2 p.m. Brooks. I scrolled through my contacts with the drum of panic in my ear. When I reached Tom Ray, my thumb hovered. Tom Ray was my high school debate partner 30 years and a lifetime ago. We argued the cost of tuition, the ethics of space exploration, and the parking lot's crowning issue, whether cafeteria pizza was a public good or a public hazard. He had gone to law school, then legal aid, then to a one-man practice with a waiting room furnished by chairs that were sturdy and hope. We sent Christmas cards. I knew his handwriting. He knew my dog's name. That was the level of alive in each other's lives we kept. I called. It rang twice. Tom Ray. Tom, I said, and my voice shook in a way that I wanted to blame on the new knee and couldn't. It's Ellie Brooks from... I know who you are, he said, and his voice shifted down into a place that felt like a porch light turning on. He didn't ask the kind of questions people ask when they want to be reassured that your problem is uphill from their doorstep. He said, "Where are you?" Meadowlark, assisted living. I think my daughter and son-in-law are selling my house. I signed a power of attorney while I was doped up on opioids. A nurse told me not to sign anything. I didn't listen. There's a closing on Friday. There's a listing with pictures that look like my couch tried out for television. I know I sound crazy. Maybe I am crazy. But this feels like a train I didn't buy a ticket for. There was a 5-beat pause. Then 3 words. I've got you. He was at Meadowlark within an hour. The receptionist kept asking if he had an appointment, and he kept smiling the way people smile when they know the rule book and also know when it allows a clause called urgent. He came into my little room in a gray sport coat with a seam out at the pocket, his hair more salt than pepper, his eyes the same clear blue they had been when he turned to me mid-round to ask, under his breath, if I had the card on agricultural subsidies. I did then. I did now. I held out the Post-it like a kind of proof. "Start at the beginning," he said, sitting at the little table by the window where a brochure explained levels of care in bullet points. "Tell me everything in order. Names, dates, times. I don't need adjectives. I need verbs." I told him. He didn't write much, but he listened with the kind of attention people mistake for romance when it's really a habit of heart, withholding judgment long enough to learn what's true. He asked to see the papers I signed. Meadowlark made a copy of whatever they had at admission, and I produced the discharge folder with the housekeeping documents Nate had called routine. He read the durable power of attorney and the HIPAA release, then the exclusive listing agreement from the brokerage and a seller's disclosure I don't remember filling out. He held the papers up like you hold a sweater to the light to see if the weave is honest. "Okay," he said. "First thing, you are not crazy. Second, you are competent. You know your name, where you are, why you're here, and what you don't want. Third, we can file for a temporary restraining order to stop any sale until a judge decides what's what." "Can men do this?" I asked, which is the kind of question the heart asks when the law is still walking up the steps. "They can try. Power of attorney gives them power, not ownership. It's a fiduciary duty, not a deed. They have to act for your benefit. If you object to selling your house while you can still bat your eyelashes and say your birthday, that's a red flag. We're not going to litigate your family in front of strangers today. Today, we're just going to hold the line." "Like a librarian in a crowded hallway," I said, and he smiled. "Exactly like that." In the morning, we went downtown. Tom picked me up at Meadowlark in a 10-year-old Subaru that smelled like coffee and dog. I slid into the passenger seat slowly, my new knee complaining the way new things complain before they settle in to fit. He drove with both hands at 10 and 2, the way they teach you before life teaches you to cut corners. We passed the cemetery where Mike, my husband, had a stone that looked like he would have liked it. Simple. True. We passed the deli where we used to split a Reuben and a cherry Coke on payday and pretend we were bad with money for an hour. We parked a block from the Montgomery County Courthouse and walked past a food truck with a handwritten sign that said pie slices, $3, with ice cream plus $1. And I thought, if I get my house, I am going to eat pie every time I want to, without asking anyone's permission. In the courthouse, the security guard waved us through with a nod Tom had obviously earned by showing up for 1,000 mornings like this one. We rode the elevator with 2 women in scrubs and a man holding a toddler in pajamas. Life inside public buildings is always a roulette wheel. Somebody's getting married, somebody's getting divorced, somebody's trying to keep the Ruth they built. We took a seat on a bench outside a courtroom that had wooden pews and a clock that ticked loud enough to count heartbeats. Tom handed me a yellow legal pad. "You talk when the judge talks to you," he said. "You look at the judge. You say the truth. If you need a break, ask me for water. When their lawyer uses words that sound bigger than your whole life, remember, the judge speaks human. We're going to ask for a temporary restraining order on any sale and for the court to suspend the POA as to real property until we have a hearing. We're not making a movie. We're putting a wedge in a door." Alyssa and Nate arrived separately, which surprised me and then didn't. Alyssa sat with her hands folded in her lap, the way she used to when she wasn't sure if she should raise her hand in class. Nate stood in the aisle, scrolling on his phone, then whispered a strategy into the ear of an attorney who had a tie that screamed, "No coffee stains." When our case was called, I walked to the table with Tom. The judge had kind eyes and the posture of a person who doesn't flinch when the story gets messy. The other attorney introduced himself and started with phrases that made my skin itch. In her best interest, safer placement, maximizing the value of the asset for long-term care. He used my name like a case file, and he nodded toward Alyssa like building a fence and pointing to the gate. Tom stood when it was his turn and didn't waste time. "Your Honor, Ms. Brooks had knee surgery and was on opioid pain medication. A nurse told her not to sign anything for 72 hours. Within that window, she signed a durable financial power of attorney that her son-in-law drafted and presented in a hospital bed. Immediately afterward, they listed her home for sale over her objection. She is competent. She is in court. She is saying no. Power of attorney is not a deed. It's a duty. We are asking for a temporary restraining order to stop any sale and to suspend the POA as to real property until a full hearing." The judge looked at me. "Miss Brooks," she said, like my name was the question, "do you want your home sold?" "No, Your Honor," I said, and heard my voice under the nerves like a keel under a boat. "Do you understand what a power of attorney is?" "I do now. I didn't then. I know it means someone can sign for you on some things when you can't, but I can. I can say my name and where I am and what I want, and I want to go home." Tom asked the court to allow a brief phone call to Nurse Linda for the record. The judge raised one eyebrow, the way teachers do when they're about to allow something because it's right, not because it's in the handbook. Tom dialed, put her on speaker, and asked 2 questions. Nurse Linda said yes, Miss Brooks was advised not to sign for 72 hours. Yes, she was on opioid pain meds within that window. Tom handed up my physical therapist letter stating I was meeting my goals and could safely return home with a shower chair and a grab bar. He slid the post-it across the table like a star witness with glue on its back. The judge removed her glasses and set them on the bench with both hands, the way people set down something fragile. "Mr. Carlson," she said to the other attorney, "power of attorney enables. It does not erase. It's a fiduciary duty, not a license. Miss Brooks is objecting. She is here. I'm granting the request. Sale of the property at issue is enjoined pending further order of this court. The power of attorney is suspended as to any transfer of real property until we sort this out. We'll set a hearing within 30 days. Miss Brooks, get yourself counsel." She looked at Tom. "Looks like you have." Then she did something I didn't expect. She looked at Alyssa and softened the chin she had held so carefully. "Ma'am, I know how families drown. I know how help can turn into hurry. Do yourself a favor and listen to your mother as hard as the world asks you to listen to everyone else. You'll be back in my courtroom soon. Make sure you're on the same side of the table then." Outside the courtroom, the air felt 20 degrees lighter. Tom exhaled a laugh that sounded like the first 3 notes of a song you haven't heard in years. "Chicken noodle soup?" he asked, and I nodded so emphatically that it made my new knee aware of itself. We went across the street to a diner with red vinyl booths and pie in a display case that had done a hard day's work since 1987. The waitress called me Hun in a way that has never, in all my years, failed to lower my blood pressure. Tom ordered 2 soups and 2 waters. When she left, he lifted his glass. To Nurse Linda, to Post-it notes, and to librarians who keep everything. I laughed and it didn't wobble. Going home had the feel of a movie where the hero walks through the rooms and the camera lingers on the shapes of a life. The grass in the front yard was a little longer than the city liked, and a bright orange hang tag on the mailbox flapped like embarrassment. Miss Alvarez had put a note on my door that said, "Ring me if you need the mower and a gossip fix." Inside, the listing team had done whatever listing teams do to make a house look like it came with the smell of lemon bars and middle school band concerts. My quilt was gone. The pillows marched across the couch like they joined the Marines. I walked from room to room and touched the mantel, the door jamb where we'd marked Alyssa's height twice a year, the edge of Mike's favorite chair that still had a dent, like he'd just gotten up to get a glass of iced tea. Tom said, "We're going to put the house back the way it was for now, and then we're going to plan. And you're going to do PT like you mean it. And you're going to eat something that didn't come out of a plastic tray." I nodded, and then I cried. The quiet kind that waters the soul and doesn't flood the floor. Tom went to the hardware store for a grab bar and a shower chair. Mrs. Alvarez appeared with enchiladas and stern affection. The mower came. The orange hang tag went in the trash. I slept in my own bed and woke up with the ridiculous feeling that my nightstand knew me. Elissa came by 2 days later, without Nate. She stood on the porch steps and pressed her lips together the way she did when she had to say, "I'm sorry," without letting the dam break. "I was trying to help," she said finally, sitting beside me on the bench. "I was drowning. Owen's speech therapy, my boss breathing down my neck, the house, your house, feeling like this thing I had to carry without knowing how. Nate said it was proactive. The therapist said boundaries. It felt like the only adult option left was to act and apologize later." "Act and apologize later is for toddler haircuts," I said, and it came out gentler than my insides. "I'm not a task. I'm a person. If you need help to help me, you say that. But we don't throw the word best around like confetti to cover the floor with it." She nodded and swallowed, and then the dam gave a little. "I was scared something bad would happen while you were here, and I'd be the one who didn't prevent it. Scared of being the bad daughter if I said I couldn't do it all. Scared to disappoint you. It was easier to move the chess pieces than to say I was overwhelmed." There was a time I would have seized the moment to lecture or to list all the times I'd been overwhelmed and chosen not to sell anyone's life out from under them. Instead, I did what I learned at the reference desk when people asked for a book they couldn't name. I asked a better question. What would help you help me if the decisions were mine? She looked startled, maybe because we're not trained to look under our fear for the tool it's hiding. If you would look at senior apartments that are more accessible, she said slowly. If you would let me take you to PT some weeks without taking it as an insult. If you would accept Meals on Wheels for a while so I'm not spooning soup into Owen and trying to make sure you ate at the same time. And if you would forgive me for acting like a person I don't want to be. I will look, I said. We'll tour co-ops where people run their own calendars and nobody knocks on your door to say the TV is at 13. I'll take the shower chair without a fight. I'll put a grab bar by the back steps. I'll let strangers bring me meatloaf and a dessert labeled mystery bars because that's the bingo of food. And I will forgive you today and tomorrow if you will promise me one thing, Alyssa. No more pins in hospital rooms. If a nurse says wait 72 hours, we wait 72 hours. She nodded. We cried a little, the adult kind that doesn't scare children, and we made a list, because lists are both our love language and our truce. The next weeks were full of the smallest victories I've ever celebrated out loud. I could carry a pot roast from oven to counter without wobbling. I learned to love the click of the grab bar as a sound that meant not falling. I did my exercises while the new news talked about things I couldn't fix, and I decided not to feel guilty for being a person recovering in a chair. Tom called every few days, never long, always precise. The second court date came and went like a formality. The judge signed an order suspending the real property powers in the POA permanently and set a path for a guardian ad litem if anyone wanted to contest competency, which no one did because the room could see the difference between an argument and a life. Tom put the order in a keep frame and said, "Hang it by the front door. It's the legal equivalent of a no soliciting sign for bad ideas." I put it on a nail where Mike's bowling league schedule used to hang, and I smiled every time I saw it. I toured independent senior co-ops with names that sounded like fancy salads. The one that lodged itself in my ribs like a good idea was called River Oaks, a low-rise near the community center where the elevator dinged like a polite greeting and the hallway smelt like dinner and laundry. There was a greenhouse where people grew tomatoes and a workshop where someone's grandpa made birdhouses with serious roofs. The manager talked to me like I was applying to join a club, not a waiting list. And for the first time since this chapter started, I thought about later without dread. In July, I hosted my quilting circle in my living room one last time because it felt like finishing a sentence where it began. In August, a contractor installed a second handrail on the back steps so I could carry watering cans like a queen. In September, I made a decision that was mine. I sold the bungalow to a young couple who came with nervous eyes and a toddler who wanted to touch the doorbell 12 times. I chose them because they said, "We love the bones," and because the woman cried when she realized the dining room would hold her grandmother's table. I priced it fairly and refused to let the agent talk me into staging throw pillows that lied about who lived there. I took Mike's route map off the wall, left a library card on the mantel for the new owners with a note that said, "Ask for Ann at the Kettering branch. She'll show you how to place holds like a pro." And I turned in my keys after walking every room and saying thank you out loud. To the walls that held us, to the floor that caught us, to the windows that faced every storm. I moved into River Oaks with 2 fewer bookcases and a lighter heart. My balcony overlooked a stretch of grass where Thursday nights belonged to the VFW and the best attempt at a waltz you will ever see outside a wedding. On my first night, I stood there with a mug of tea and watched a woman from 3B teach a man from 2A how to box step, calling out 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 in a voice that could have been a metronome and a lullaby at once. Tom showed up 20 minutes later with a plant that looked unkillable and a bakery box. "I brought housewarming paperwork," he said, tapping the box with the back of his fingers. 2 slices of apple pie and 2 forks. "What's the legal citation?" I asked, because some jokes are both inside and true. "Section 1, he said, "you are safe. Section 2, you are seen. Section 3, which I am willing to move to trial if you push me, you promise to call me if anyone brings a clipboard within 10 feet of your person." "I promise," I said, and we ate pie on a balcony that felt like a ship in a calm sea. Fall came. I learned the names of the women in my hallway and which one had the good sugar cookies and which one had the secret stash of gossip she would only share if you brought coffee from the lobby. I joined the greenhouse committee and killed 2 tomatoes with love and overwatering before I learned restraint. I volunteered at the library one afternoon a week where I taught a 4th grader how to find sports biographies while his grandmother asked me for that one with the lighthouse on the cover, no, the other lighthouse. I slept through the night without the weight on my chest that felt like a bowling ball named What If. Alyssa came on Sundays with Owen. We made a routine of the puzzle table in the common room and cocoa from the machine that pretended it had barista skills and didn't. The first time she came without calling and knocked on my door with a smile that looked like her childhood, I felt something unclench that I hadn't realized was clenched. I found a therapist who doesn't just hand me the word boundaries like a sticker, she said, and I laughed in the good way, the way that turns into a sigh. I'm learning too, I told her, how not to call what I want selfish, how to ask for help without handing over the keys, how to forgive in installments and not charge interest. We did Thanksgiving in the River Oaks community room because my kitchen could not hold the mother-in-law who brings green bean casserole with real onions, the grandson who thinks roll should be a food group, and the daughter who stirs gravy like it owes her rent. We pushed 4 tables together, and Mrs. Alvarez came with enchiladas because she claimed turkey was a try-hard. Tom came late with a pie that was always still warm because he has a sixth sense for when a room needs one more thing. He took the seat beside me and passed the cranberry sauce like a man who knows how to move in a circle and not take up more space than the chair allows. On a Thursday in December, the judge's office mailed the final order that made the temporary permanent and closed the docket like a book that had been read all the way to the acknowledgments. Tom framed that order too, not because I needed the paper on my wall, but because there was something delicious about turning the thing that once scared you into decor. We hung it by the door with a little hook that says we are the kind of people who mark our exits with reminders of our victories. I still have the Post-it. It lives now in the front of the devotional where I keep it pressed like a leaf the color of a lesson, not because I need to be angry at anyone, because I need to remember that small things can be big alarms, that nurses know the truth before you can, and that just paper is how we frame a life we're too busy to see as sacred. Not every story ends with a mansion and a tuxedo and 3 perfect words whispered in a doorway. Mine ends with a courthouse, a diner, a nurse who told the truth, a Post-it that saved my home, and a man who showed up with a Subaru and a steady voice that said, "I've got you," like a sentence that still echoes when I'm folding towels. If you need the moral spelled out because your day has been long and your heart is tired, here it is, plain as pie cooling on a window ledge. Love is not control. Help that erases your voice isn't help. Read before you sign. Ask before you hand over your life. And don't count yourself alone while there are people who answer the phone and say, "I've got you," and mean it. I don't know what will happen next year. I might learn to waltz without stepping on 2A's shoes. I might learn how to grow tomatoes that make it to July. I might even let Tom take me to a movie in a theater, the kind with a seat that leans back and a tub of popcorn bigger than good decisions. What I know is this: I get to choose. I get to plan, to pause, to call the nurse's advice back up like a song I know by heart. I get to be my own person in my own place with my own keys. And every time I walk past the frame by the door, I think, quietly and with gratitude, about the ordinary heroism of people who write down what happened, stand up in rooms with fluorescent lights, and say the words that hold a life open long enough for the truth to get in. One afternoon in early spring, I took the bus downtown just to prove to myself I could. I got off near the courthouse with no agenda and walked past the diner. The same waitress was on shift. She looked up, recognized me the way small towns recognize a story that meant something, and held up the coffee pot. "Honey," she asked, already reaching for a mug. "Please," I said, sliding into a booth that had my name on it, only in the ledger I keep inside. I ordered chicken noodle soup and a slice of apple pie, and tried not to make a metaphor out of it. Tom happened to walk in 3 minutes later because life sometimes hands you the neat bow, and I waved him over like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You look good," he said, and I said, "I am good," and felt the sentence click into place. "What's next?" he asked. "Planting, tomatoes, if the greenhouse committee forgives me, maybe learning to waltz decently, Maybe writing a letter to Nurse Linda because the world underpays and underthinks people who hold the line. He nodded like a man who collects small, brave plans and keeps them polished. We ate pie and didn't make promises because not every chapter needs one. Sometimes it's enough to sit in the middle of an ordinary day with somebody who knows how to say the thing that saved you once and would again if you needed it. On the bus ride home, a little boy 2 rows up told his mother he liked watching houses go by because he could see other people's stories and make up his own. I watched the houses too, porches piled with boots and hope, windows throwing afternoon sun onto kitchen tables, mailboxes with their little flags up like a salute. And I thought about how many lives are exactly where they belong and how many are trying to get back. I thought about the weight we put on paper and the way a signature can be either a promise or a door. I thought about my own door, the one at River Oaks with the little wreath I made from fabric scraps and how I taped a tiny index card behind it where only I can see. 3 words inked in my neat librarian hand. I've got you. I say it to myself now, sometimes out loud, when I'm lifting the watering can or taking those first steps across a floor I still trust. I say it when the phone rings after 9 p.m. and it's Alyssa, whisper-tired but laughing because Owen told his preschool teacher that pie is a food group and she wanted me to know he is genetically sound. I say it when I turn down the bed and save one cool corner for the part of me that remembers what it was to feel smaller than a form and bigger than a worry in the same hour. I say it because if there is one lesson I would pin to a bulletin board and stand guard over until the lunch bell rings, it's this. The person you need to hear it from most might be the one looking back at you in the bathroom mirror. And the second most important person is the one who answers on the second ring and says it like a promise that doesn't need a contract. If you were listening to this hoping for fireworks, I'm sorry, and also you're welcome. Fireworks leave smoke. What I have now leaves morning light on a table where the mail in the basket is all addressed to me. The electric bill with my name, no one else's. The library hold notice for the new novel that's a little too long and probably perfect. A card from Nurse Linda with handwriting that loops and lands. A fridge magnet that says, "Do not sign hungry, angry, lonely, or tired," which is funny until it isn't. A note from Tom on a yellow legal pad I kept because it made me laugh. Section 4, you're allowed to be happy. There's a woman down the hall who bakes on Sundays, and when the hall smells like cinnamon, I think of the times this story could have tilted toward an ending I couldn't live with. I think of Judge Kind Eyes, of a Post-it that did the work of a flare gun, of Mrs. Alvarez taking my trash can back up my driveway with the dignity of a queen, of 2 pie slices on a balcony and a plant that refuses to die. I think of a word we used to teach in the library with picture books, agency, and how it sounds like a government office when you first hear it and becomes a superpower when you figure out it means you get to choose. So here we are, you and me, at the end of the story where nothing exploded and everything mattered. If you need to write something down before we part ways, write this. You are allowed to insist on being in the room where your own life is decided. You are allowed to require that help feels like help. You are allowed to ask the person holding a pen to wait 3 days because a nurse told you to. You are allowed to call the person who will say, "I've got you," and show up with a car that smells like coffee and a plan that smells like common sense. I will never be the woman who can dance without looking at her feet. But I am the woman who can look up now and then and trust the floor. I am the woman who knows what to do with a Post-it that falls from the pocket and lands in her hand like a little yellow truth. I am the woman who chose a co-op with a greenhouse instead of the beige carpet where the bird feeder never gets empty and the birds never come. I am the woman who can say home and mean a place I live, a body I trust, and a way I move through the world without apologizing for taking up space. If you're sitting at your own kitchen table with paperwork you don't understand and a heart that knows something is sideways, here is my last gift. Take a breath. Put the pen down, Call the nurse, the friend, the lawyer who still has your number in a drawer somewhere. Wait 72 hours. Eat pie. Then say the 3 words out loud. Say them to yourself first, and then to the person who shows up on the second ring. I've got you.